Hello everyone, welcome to our second unit on epistemology, which is another, or a fancy way of saying the study of knowledge, study of what we know. This unit 2, is broken up into 3 parts, so this is the first of 3 parts. So, a few definitions about the word epistemology. It's basically one of the branches of philosophy that's specifically concerned with the theory of knowledge, the methods, the validity, how do we know what's valid as knowledge, and what counts as knowledge. So when we say scope, what are sort of the endpoints of what you can count as something that is knowledge. Another way of saying this is that epistemology is the investigation of what's the difference between just mere opinion and something that's known as justified belief, or true justified belief is another phrase. Now your midterm, this is just a little warning, will require you to know the difference and to consider differences between justified belief and opinion. And we'll get into that more later, but just a little hint here. For those of you who are etymology fans, who like to know where words come from, it comes from the Greek word epistem, which means knowledge, and logos, which has to do with logical discourse. And as you'll see, that's a lot of what this epistemology, or the study of knowledge, is. How do you arrive at a logical explanation, or how do you use logic to arrive at something we count as true? The 2 philosophers that you'll be working with in this unit are Plato and Descartes. These are not the only 2 names associated with epistemology, or even more specifically rationalism, which is one field, I guess you could say, under the larger branch of epistemology. But these are the 2 that we're working with today. Plato is quite a big name in it. He would be one of the first. You can't really call him a rationalist. He would be under something called idealism, but later philosophers who follow his methods and who are called rationalists follow. There's overlap between them. Now Plato is one of the sort of founding fathers of Western philosophy. There's sort of 3 big names. You've probably heard of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Plato is the student of Socrates, who's really the father, maybe the grandfather of philosophy, who didn't write anything down. It's Plato who wrote down Socrates' teaching, and then Aristotle is a student of Plato. So these 3, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, are the sort of the famous 3 who start Western philosophy. And if there's a famous name for the East, it would be Confucius, but Plato is a big one for Western philosophy. And Descartes has been called the father of modern philosophy, and we'll get to him a little bit more later. So, as I said, epistemology is the big umbrella definition for theories of knowledge. Within that, you have different schools, the same thing, we could say hockey, that's a giant sport, and then you've got the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Boston Bruins and the whoever else, right, the Ottawa Senators. So we have that same sort of thing, fields underneath epistemology, and what we're working with this week is rationalism. And that's basically the view that knowledge is acquired through reason, rather than through the aid of any other, specifically any of your senses. I've got basically 3 different definitions, kind of saying all the same thing. Rationalism is the view that regards reason as the chief source and test of knowledge, or it's any view appealing to reason as a source of knowledge or as justification for knowledge. So keep that in mind here. It's that the source, how you arrive at knowledge, is through reason, not through something. And when we say the senses, I mean sight, hearing, but it's through thought that you get there. And rationalists tend to think that reason and the ability of the human to reason provides a source and a quality or a kind of knowledge that can't come from any other sources. So it's almost as if the quality of reasoning, or the product you get from reasoning, is a product that you can't get any other way. So it's a definitely privileged source of information, or source of, not information, source of knowledge. So one of the things that links Plato with Descartes and other rationalists is this idea that there is innate knowledge, that some of us are just born with certain kinds of knowledge built into us. And the key term here is called a priori, which means, if you think of it in terms of prior to something, meaning before. So a priori means it's in there already, we have an innate ability to sort of access it. Now if you were Descartes or Plato, you would think it's because we all have a soul. Our soul we inherit from God, and God is the source of all knowledge, so therefore we are born with kind of this little link to God, and which would be our ability to reason and these kinds of knowledge. Now Plato obviously is not Christian, but he did believe that we have innate knowledge of what he called forms. And I've given you some links here, or some examples what he means by a form. And he would consider a mathematical object and mathematical concepts like triangles or largeness or equality. So mathematical objects, and then also moral concepts, goodness, beauty, virtue, piety, all of these things he thinks we're just born with this kind of knowledge. It's almost like you just need to tap into it, something that's innate inside us. Now Descartes, who's a 16th century philosopher and Christian, he thought that the idea of God, which was associated with perfection and infinity, as well as knowledge of my own existence, these are innate things that we're just born with. And we don't have to sort of search outside. As long as we think, as long as we can reason, we can access this kind of knowledge. Now, there's a big debate within philosophy, within the field of philosophy, between the rationalists and another group that's called the empiricists. And part 2 of this unit is looking at the empiricist point of view. So the rationalists, and I'm just going to give you the quick overview now, rationalist claims that concepts and knowledge are gained independently of sense experience, and that these are more certain source of truth than the kind of knowledge you get through sense experience. So they're not arguing that you can't get knowledge from sense, it's just that the kind you get through reason is more certain, it's more valid. You can be more sure of it than you can through your senses. Now empiricists say no, sense experience is the ultimate source of all our concepts and knowledge. There's no way that you can know anything without experience first. And so when I say the big debate, this is where it comes down to right here. This is what they're arguing over. Don't think of this in terms of what comes first, like first we get experience and then we get knowledge, and no, first we have a knowledge and then we have experiences. It's more about which one is more sure. Which one, so when we say the source, it's not necessarily time-wise, but source as in most valid, most reliable. And that's a big difference to keep in mind. Now I want to just go over really quickly some of the Plato concepts. He has something called a dividing line. So I've given you 2 different ways of thinking of this. The part that you're reading that's called the allegory of the cave, you really need to pay attention to that word allegory. He is using this as a little story to help you understand what he means about the difference between the world of matter and the world of forms, or the world of the body and experience and senses, and the world of the mind and logic. So there's a nice little animated video which is quite funny to watch, but don't take it literally. Remember, this is an allegory. So the idea there is that there's the realm that's visible. That's the realm that he associates with the cave, and he would call that the realm of the opinion. This is where we see something, we think what we're seeing is the truth, we act on it, we talk about it, we argue about it, but what he says is it's all just a reflection of a simpler version, a shadowy version of what is something we can't see, but is where actual true knowledge or the form resides. And so you've given you some different terms here, right? Mathematical understanding, the ability to know that a triangle has 3 sides, and I'm never going to draw a triangle with 4 sides because I know from the word triangle that it has 3 sides. I don't need to go look at 5 different triangles to say, oh look, all these triangles have 3 sides, so triangles must have 3. I just know triangle, 3 sides. It will always have 3 sides. They might be different shapes, but it will always be 3. So there's kind of this hierarchy of gradual growth towards having true knowledge, but also think of it. So there's kind of 4 different stages, and the philosopher is somebody who's made it to the very end and who's returned and is now trying to teach everybody who thinks they're nuts. But you can also think of it as 2 parts, right? There's the world that's in the cave, that's everybody who's only operating by opinion, and then there's the world outside of the cave, and those are the people who have knowledge. So keep that distinction in mind between the world of opinion, which is if I base claims to truth on what I see or hear. It's knowledge if I base it on my understanding of rational thought and my knowledge of the true form itself, of the concept, rather than just my particular understanding of it. So you think of this in terms of the concept of chair. So I'm sitting in one chair, beside me is another chair. The 2 chairs look very different. If all I ever see is a particular kind of chair, I'm going to think that's what a chair looks like. It's not until I see, say, 40 different kinds of chairs I realize, oh, there's something that exists that's called that we would call chairness, or the idea of chair. And you can have 100 different varieties, but each one of those are particular. Each one of those are what he would call the shadow of what exists somewhere out there in the world of the idea of chair, which is something to sit in and has legs that hold you up, right? So it might look different forms. Maybe it doesn't have legs, maybe it's got 1 leg, maybe it's actually on the ground. But all of these things are just particular manifestations of one higher, larger, eternal concept of chair. Hopefully that makes sense to you. So, just to explain that allegory a little bit more, we call it rationalist because he says there are distinct ways at arriving at knowledge, and he's privileging one kind over the other. And he says very clearly that what the senses, what your eyes, what your ears reveal, is the same thing as just seeing shadowy images on a wall of a poorly lit cave. What your intellect, what your reason can reveal, is like being outside in a brightly lit sunshine where you can see everything clearly, right? So if you use reason, you're in the sun. If you're using your senses, your eyes and your ears, it's like being in this cave where all you get to see are the shadows. So that is my quick introduction. I am leaving introductions that I've used in the past, which were much longer in the unit, so if you want additional information. But this should hopefully orient you to the text you're reading this week. I look forward to reading your posts.